Hey guys, Marshall here with Rocky River 4x4, and today we're going to be talking about, why I chose my Land Rover, what questions I asked myself, what questions do you need to ask yourself when picking a new rig, or what base you're going to start off with, whether you're overlanding or just 4x4ing. So let's get into it, shall we? So one of the first questions I asked myself was, do I need to buy a new vehicle or do I need to get something used? And it really depends on your budget. I can't afford new vehicles and I can't afford new vehicle parts. A lot of this rig will be me either going to a junkyard and pulling the part off and putting it on this, or finding Rock Auto or whatever other random cheap parts place, and I'm going to be doing a huge amount of not OEM things because it is a Land Rover and I cannot afford Land Rover parts straight from the factory, or however you want to say it. If you can afford a new rig, the things you need to consider is I can afford to buy a new rig, and I might be able to afford to have the parts replaced later on when they break, because no matter if you buy new or old, they will break. All vehicles will break. No matter if you're driving on the highway and you have a pavement princess, or you're taking this thing across the Rubicon, I mean, you're gonna have parts that break. But are you gonna be able to afford those parts when they break? How large of a aftermarket program is there for your vehicle, so that maybe you might not be able to afford the best part, or the OEM, but you might have 5 or 6 more choices that it just keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as you go down the line. So these are things to consider when you're getting new or used, or even if you are getting a new rig or a used rig and you're just strictly looking through those aspects. Maybe how new or how used. Mine's a 2002. We're looking at a 20-year-old vehicle, about to be, I think it was built in March. So technically, as of today, it's actually a 21-year-old vehicle. But I do have a huge aftermarket support. Maybe not stateside, because stateside these things don't have a huge presence. I mean, Jeep and Toyotas you'll see those on the trail. You see more Subarus than you'll see Land Rovers on the trails. But internationally, and though it might be expensive to ship those parts in, but internationally, Land Rover's pretty much taken over. I shouldn't say taken over, but they have a huge presence across the world. And that might be another thing you need to realize if you're buying new or used. If you are traveling across the world with this thing, you're shipping it to Argentina and going down Argentina, or if you're going to Africa, how readily available are parts going to be for your new vehicle or even used? So you have to take that in consideration. So when I chose this vehicle also, I had to ask myself, do I want a full-size vehicle, or do I need something a little bit smaller? How many people I'm carrying, how much gear I'm carrying? And my answer to that question is I have a family of 4, and though I might not be taking them every time with me, I might want to bring my buddies. I mean, I'm out of my little friend group, I'm really the only one getting into this. Now my friends and I go camping and fishing and stuff like that, but we've always either camped and then walked to the lake, or we've done kayaking trips. So you just kind of camp on the side of the river or lake or whatever. And so this will be the first time that all of us will be able to actually just drive in a direction and then stop and hang out for a while, and then pick it up in the morning. So that's another thing to consider. Now, I live in North Carolina, and the terrain and trails around here, you could get away with like a full-size truck, but you're going to be looking at limiting on a few trails. Now, if you're in Utah or the Midwest, and you could go full size all day, because you're not really doing rock crawling and going through huge amounts of like forest and stuff like that, where you have to kind of like serpentine in between trees and stuff like that. And so for me, this Land Rover, though it's heavier than a lot of vehicles, and it's maybe a little bit longer, it kind of fits that perfect, you know, I want the capacity and storage ability along with the availability to seat people. I'm gonna tell you guys, I'm having a hard time with words today. Man, words are hard. I cannot think today. Really, I can never think. If you ask all my friends, I'm just terrible at communicating verbally. But anyway, so that's another question to ask yourself. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I have like a little piece of paper that tells me like my talking points, because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I wrote all of them down, and I have to either pause the video and, you know, look at it and then come back, or I could just grab this paper. And now that I'm doing this, I really think I'm just gonna grab the paper, and you're just gonna watch me carry this piece of paper with me as I talk through it, because I'm treating this more as a informational thing than like some fancy high-tech, you know, tech video that, you know, it's, you know, I'm just gonna be real with you guys. So another thing to consider is range versus well, I shouldn't say versus, but range / gas versus diesel. Now this is a gas because that's the only thing they offer, and right now diesel prices are insane, and you could get away with making your own diesel, especially if you're an older vehicle. But that's another thing, is if you go and buy a new diesel, you have to get DEF, and oh, you can delete it, and oh, you can do this and the fourth. I'm telling you now, they're cracking down on that stuff so much that shops won't work on your stuff if you have it deleted. I mean, no one wants to touch that stuff. And you can find, I don't want to say sleazy places, but you can find shops that will work on deleted stuff, and you can find shops that will delete your stuff. But I chose gas because not only is it available wherever I go. I mean, there's no such thing as a gas station that only does diesel. There's every gas station you ever are going to come across will at least have gas. But the other thing with it is that diesels are so hard to start in the cold. I mean, especially if you are out northeast, whatever. You know, we're here in North Carolina. It doesn't really get cold here, but if I ever wanted to travel somewhere cold, I'm just gonna have to figure out some type of method to make sure this thing stays warm so that I can start it. I mean, then I used to have a 7.3 Power Stroke, and I would spend an hour trying to get the thing started here in North Carolina when it might get to 30s. You know, in the middle of the night it might be 20s, but you know, it doesn't. I couldn't imagine trying to do that every time I wanted to start my trail. So I went with gas. And going back to what I was saying earlier, range. Now this thing has terrible gas mileage. It is geared real low for off-roading, so which is great when you're actually off-roading. If you're driving to the trail, you're gonna get terrible gas mileage. I mean, things would be tacked out going 70 miles an hour. So it's gonna burn so much fuel, and it's all-time four-wheel drive. So it's not like I put in two-wheel drive and get a little bit of gas mileage. This thing is a gas guzzler, and so that might be something that you need to realize. You know, how far am I going, and you know, do I want to fuck with putting another tank in it, or a whole bunch of, you know, jerry cans or whatever auxiliary another hard word there, you know, whatever, it's rather additional or whatever fuel tanks and jugs or whatever that you want to do. So that's also something to consider. Now for me, I'm not too concerned about range. I mean, I'm doing North Carolina. I might drive you know, outside the state and might tackle these Rubicons and stuff like that. But right now, my experience, I cannot do those things. I would have to be winched constantly. And the threat of rolling this thing over, I can't afford to get a new one if this thing rolls over. So range for me is not so important, and you know, so that's why, you know, that answers the question of why I chose this. Going back to what I said before about aftermarket, you know, I kind of touched on already, but I just want to add a little bit more pointers. There is a ton of these things. I mean, there are so many of them for sale that, and there's such a huge aftermarket support that, you know, your Jeeps and your Toyotas, of course, those things also have huge aftermarket support. But so I know some people like to think, oh, I'm going to use, I saw on a trail one time a old Japanese fire truck. I mean, it was tiny. I mean, it was probably not any longer than mine. And they took the tank off the back and put a camper, like a fabricated camper on it, and it looked cool. I mean, it was probably the coolest vehicle. Little bee there, sorry. I'm doing these outside, so you know, you got to deal with nature. But anyway, the fire truck, when I did the trail and there was that fire truck, like, what happens if you know, like even something simple like hoses or alternator, something that breaks on every vehicle, how you can get apart from that, you know? And it might be something that he can get, but he's done that research for that vehicle, I'm hoping, and knows what, you know, the good things and bad things are about this. And though your rig might look so cool and it might perform so well, how long did it take you to get it to that point? And are you willing to wait weeks, months even, you know, maybe not months, but a long period of time to get that part back? I mean, it's frustrating to be not able to drive your vehicle. Another thing that really was a huge motivation for getting the Land Rover was comfort. I mean, this thing, driving it off-road, on-road, is so comfortable. The vision you have, you know, you sit pretty high, especially if you're in the rear seats. I mean, my kids can see everything I can see, and they're young kids, so they can have just as much vision, even though they're behind two full-grown adults. It has leather seats, it has climate control, and, you know, in different areas. Has two sunroofs, so you get a lot of breeze. The windows and the door are real narrow, and I really don't know the science behind this, but when you drive this thing down the highway, a lot of vehicles, I feel like the air like cuts in real bad. This one, it doesn't really. I mean, the air, you could be driving down the highway going 60 miles an hour, and you don't feel like you're getting like face planted with, you know, 60-mile-an-hour winds. So yeah, so that's reason why. And, you know, just that comfort on the road, but more importantly off-road. You know, some of these, like the newer ones, like the Discovery 3s and 4s, have like airbags and air suspension, so they you know, when they bounce, they don't bounce as hard. And, you know, that's another thing what to realize is how much you want to deal with getting shook to death. I mean, I want a little bit, but like as I get older, I don't want to constantly be, you know, going like this the whole way. And, you know, I want it to be dampered a little bit. I want to feel it because I'm off-roading, but I don't want to feel like I have to hold on for dear life, or I have to get aftermarket seats that, you know, really strap you down and keep you solid and still. So I mean, that's another thing to look at. Another thing to realize, and we kind of talked about this earlier, is like your terrain. Now, these have been tested worldwide. I mean, they got the Camel Trophy, there's years of Camel Trophy, they got years of like a lot of, maybe not this Land Rover Discoveries, but Land Rover in general has been tested on, you know, doing safari stuff, and you know, farmers in Britain, and you know, there's just so much that's been tested out of these things that I feel like for me, no matter where I go, and I might have to build it up or have a little bit more, you know, lift, and you know, maybe different tires and stuff like that, but I feel like for me, whatever I'm going to throw at it, though it might need a few modifications, it's going to handle it. Now, things to realize that are not good, you also have to ask the questions that, you know, are what are the bad things? Like, let's say this vehicle checks all your boxes, and now you're looking at it like, okay, well, what am I gonna have to deal with? You know, what the reliability, the you know, there's so many different things, but we'll talk about them. So for one, reliability. Now these things have a terrible man, some words, man, I'm telling you,
Nope.
they're freaking hard. What is known for what
Nope.
we're just gonna take a pause. All right. Another thing, guys, is the questions to ask yourself when you're not let's say this vehicle has checked all your boxes and you know exactly what year and all the different dynamics of it that you're getting. One thing to be important is to ask what is wrong with this vehicle. Not specifically when you're buying from the owner and they're saying like, hey, like, oh, you know, it needs a new head gasket, or it needs, you know, it's got the 3 amigos and you got to change the, you know, wheel bearing because the ABS sensor got chewed up. And I'm saying these because, not, you know, knock on wood, not the fact that the head gasket's gone bad, but I have had to deal with 3 amigos, which is a bad wheel bearing, which was an ABS sensor, and a bunch of other things. But yeah, the more important thing is to ask the questions of what are these things known to be bad at. For my Land Rover, reliability issues were the ABS traction control, and hill descent, which, like I said before, was it's called a 3 amigos on these. And all the fixes that you have to do on these vehicles when you have reliability issues, can you do them? Does someone else have to perform them? I can pretty much do, I would say, 95% of the fixes. So whatever this thing throws at me, I will be able to fix. And so really for me, it's just time and part money. But when you're purchasing your vehicle, and let's say it's reliable or unreliable, you know, what breaks on it commonly outside of 4-wheel, now we're not even talking about like, you know, a axle or a drive shaft or whatever, we're just talking about normal usage. What reliability issues have people come across? Because there's going to be a trillion things that someone's going to raise their hand and go, oh, well, I was taking this on this trail and, you know, my drive shaft snapped in half. And it's like, yeah, but like, what were you doing up to that point? What have you been doing up to that point? So like to say, you know, oh, I have terrible drive shafts, or, you know, this is just an example, but you get what I'm saying. So this vehicle's notorious for unreliability, which I feel like I can cure. Head gaskets are a problem. It has a constant rust prevention system underneath. It's constantly leaking oil. I am an environmentalist per se, so I do know that this thing leaks oil, and so I'm not taking it across water. I don't want it to wash away and go into, you know, public water supply, or even, you know, rivers and mess with the fish and stuff like that. So these are things you need to ask yourself, like, oh, well, you know, oil in the driveway, is that gonna bother me? I know a lot of people, you know, they don't like vehicles that use the bathroom. So that's a thing to consider for reliability is, you know, gaskets, and not only ones that can affect your vehicle, but, you know, ones that are just gonna make everything real nasty to work on and, you know, dirty up the environment. So that's another thing. These things, as you can see already, the plastic, I mean, everywhere that there's plastic outside of maybe the mirrors, it disintegrates. Like, it hates sun. So I'm going to be replacing plastic pieces, and I don't know if I'm going to replace them. Honest, I mean, I got to get a bumper, I got to get a rear bumper, but I'm going to be replacing that with metal. And even if it still had its bumper, I'd be replacing it with a metal one, because I am going to be taking off-road, and I don't want to you know, bump into something and, you know, have a crack, or, you know, mess up. I want some protection, I want some body armor. So that didn't bother me so much. But like my rain guards and stuff like that, you know, they're gone. I mean, they're completely, this whole section right here is supposed to be covered with a piece of plastic, and on the other side too, it's gone. And on this side, I don't know if you can see it, but this side, or this wheel, doesn't have a plastic fender, but that one does. And so these are things that, like, you got to take in consideration that, you know, though they are a problem, don't really care about that problem. And so you know, when you're talking about reliability, for me, though this thing has its issues, I don't think they're going to be too much of a headache for me. And I'll tell you guys now a little tip if you're deciding to do Land Rover, which, by the way, this isn't like a you should buy a Land Rover video. I bought it because it checks all my boxes. You might, you know, decide that, you know, I love Jeeps, I love the way they look, I don't care about any issue with them, I'm gonna buy a Land Rover no matter what anybody ever tells me. And I'm not saying that Jeeps are terrible, or, you know, Land Rovers. I have no preference on what, I would never suggest a single vehicle to someone. If someone asked me, like, name your top 5, I can do that, but I couldn't pick someone's vehicle for them. Another thing, where was I going with this? With this Land Rover, we were talking about fixing some of the issues. So it has an overheating problem because it's an aluminum block with an aluminum head. So the head gaskets and the piston, the cylinder cylinder walls expand and contract, expand and contract. So you got to keep them cool for longer periods of time. And so, though this vehicle, I'm not sure what it suggests on oil, I went with a 1540 all year round. Hot, cold, does not matter. If you're maybe in a higher climate, like a colder climate, you might want to go with like a 1030. I also use the best antifreeze out there, and it's, you know, extended life and, you know, million miles. And I'm not going to keep it in there for a million miles, but keeping on top of your ways your vehicle cools itself, and making sure that you are choosing appropriate oil. And I am a Chevron fan. I've worked for a company that deals with Chevron, or, you know, is one of their suppliers. The company I work for now uses Chevron products. And when I was working for the supplying company, they sent me to a class, and granted, it was done by Chevron, but they showed me why Chevron is better than their competitors. And it wasn't like, I mean, it was facts. And I'm not saying that, like, you know, Rotella or Shell, or, you know, those are the same thing, but, you know, Shell or Castrol, you know, people have a lot of great experiences with these products. But for me, Chevron and their Ursa 1540, which I run in a lot of my vehicles, I haven't had issues with it. It keeps the vehicle cool. You know, it doesn't get gummed up. It has the important additives in it, like zinc and all the stuff that protect older engines. And so those things are important to me. And I'm not saying that, you know, other oils don't provide the same thing as Chevron does. And I haven't done extensive research across the board on all different products. So if there is a product out there that you guys like, hey, I've had a lot of experience with this, I know you said that, you know, this, that, and the fourth about Chevron, but check this out, it's a little bit cheaper, but it's, you know, it has the same standards, I'll definitely try it. You know, it has to be a 1540 because I need this thing to stay cold. I need as cold as possible. Another thing that these Land Rovers, part of their overheating problem is the thermostat. The thermostat opens at a pretty high temperature. So a lot of people, I can't remember if it's a 180 or 186 degree Fahrenheit, of course, but you got to change the thermostat in it so that it opens at a cooler temperature, so that that coolant works sooner and longer. And then the last thing is the thermostats on these things, or the temperature gauge, I should say, doesn't read till it's like too late. So you have to get some type of like, I don't know exactly what the industry is called, but some type of monitor that monitors your temperature of your engine, that tells you the exact degree. I have one on my work truck. Not that my work truck has overheating problems, but I do put it through the ringer on a lot of different aspects. So my one on my truck tells me, you know, NOx and knock degree and temperature for both engine oil and transmission fluid and coolant and stuff like that, because I drive this thing very far distances with a lot of weight sometimes, and so I want to make sure that once it starts to overheat, you cut it off immediately, and you got to figure out why it overheated, because no matter what vehicle you get, overheating is always going to be an issue if it does happen. So like I said, just a little tips on if you decide to get Land Rovers with the I can't remember what the engine is, but it's an old Buick engine, but it's aluminum on aluminum, and so aluminum is prone to a lot of expansion and contraction. So another thing that you need to worry about when buying your vehicle, or choosing a vehicle I should say, is that, is your vehicle really what you need now, or what you need when you have experience? So like I said before, I don't have a lot of experience. There are certain trails and certain places that I could probably do. You know, before I said I might roll the vehicle, but I feel like if I did enough research and watched enough videos and maybe, you know, rode along with somebody for one time, that, you know, I'd be able to do it by myself, or, you know, with a convoy. But you're going to put all these parts in, or maybe it already comes with all these parts, but are you really going to be able to like utilize them? I mean, some people jack these things up, you know, 5-inch lifts, and then, you know, maybe like a 1 or 2, you know, whether it's like full suspension lift, or if it's a mix between body and suspension or whatever. But they do these crazy stuff to their vehicles, or buy these crazy vehicles that they can't even like their driving ability doesn't outperform the vehicle's ability. And I think that's an important question to ask yourself, is what do I really need now? And then once I do this more and more often, what's the high end? Where does this vehicle's performance end? And will I ever get past that point? Or will I get to that point and then I'm gonna be having so much fun it doesn't matter? You know, a lot of guys don't touch a single rock or a single pit or go across any water. And so these people, they buy these vehicles with the snorkel and, you know, maybe the differential, the breather in the back and stuff like that. And you have all these components that, you know, come with the vehicle, or you put on the vehicle, and you really don't need. I mean, you're talking about people you see on the internet do this for a living, whether it's because they, you know, they do it for YouTube, they're on a professional team, that, you know, they maybe not do it for a living, but they're rich by all means, and they, you know, they just said, you know, I'm selling the business and I'm just going to do overlanding for the rest of my life. So you got to figure out what your skill level is, how far you're gonna go down that skill, and what you really need. You know, and not only for your driving ability, but your mechanical ability too, and how well you can fix things or weld, or you know, anything like that. For me, I can't weld, so I have a few friends that can weld, that I met, you know, through jobs, and you know, friends of family and family of friends and stuff like that, and so they'll help me on that aspect. But you know, you don't want, you know, going back to the diesel, you don't want to get a brand new diesel that requires DEF. And now the DEF system, which I will tell you will go bad. Ask anybody who's owned a new diesel with the DEF systems, they're gonna go bad relatively soon. I mean, I've seen them expire twice within a vehicle's warranty. I mean, sometimes, you know, I don't know anything about DEF systems. I know how they work, and I know how to essentially diagnose maybe a kind of general area of what the problem is. But like, if you were to say like, hey, fix this, I'd be like, maybe not, I don't know. So these are the things that you have to realize when purchasing a vehicle, and also upgrading that vehicle. Another thing to realize, kind of going back to the reliability, is and I kind of did touch on it a little bit, but like, what is reliable? So Land Rover, from like the, you know, I wouldn't say drivetrain, but I would say the suspension, the axles, the body is all very stout. I mean, it's got aluminum body panels, so they won't rust. I mean, you can see my paint's all messed up, and you probably can't see it, but there are a lot of like scrapes and cracks in the paint, stuff like that. But all you see is metal, because it's, like I said, it's aluminum. And so that's a thing to realize, is, you know, what parts are reliable. Because you're not, if I'm telling you now, if you get a vehicle and you think to yourself, I'm going to put a, you know, like say you have a Jeep, you're going to put a, you know, a Hellcat engine in it or something like that. That is, I don't want to discourage you from doing it, but it's so unrealistic because of the cost, because of the modifications. If your vehicle was supposed to have that engine in it, it would have came as an option for that vehicle. You're gonna have so much modification, you're gonna have so much time and money dumped into this vehicle to do an engine swap, or, you know, maybe change axles, or, you know, change a major component of this vehicle, that you might, by the time you're done with it, you're like, was it even worth it? So, you know, picking your vehicle, also see like what models were available, and you might be able to buy a base model vehicle, and then you might be able to find a scrap, you know, you might find a vehicle from a scrapyard, or a part out vehicle. You could buy the whole thing, and then you could put all the parts on there for tens of thousands of dollars cheaper than if you bought it with those modifications already on it. So that's another important thing to talk to yourself about. You know, guys, I'm kind of coming to the line of, you know, what questions you ask yourself. So I think now I'm going to kind of walk around my Land Rover to very specific components, and rather I like them or I hate them. And so, you know, if I didn't talk about it before, it might go into certain categories in more detail. So yeah, let's take a walk around this thing and figure out, you know, what I like and what I don't like. Alrighty guys, so we're going to talk about what specifically I like about this vehicle. Maybe it would answer questions that I might have gone over and I didn't say, like, oh, well, this is why, you know, what checked my box in this category. So I think I said it before, it is an all aluminum body panels. So though they will get dented and scratched up, which, you know, if you go overlanding and if you're afraid to mess up your vehicle, I would probably choose a different motorsport. But what I like about it doesn't rust. And this is a all Southern vehicle. It was from the Land Rover dealership in South Carolina, and then it came up here to North Carolina, and I don't live in like the mountains, so we don't get a lot of salt and snow and stuff like that. So though it doesn't isn't a huge factor for me, it is something that is kind of nice to know about. Speaking of body, I talked about it before, plastic, terrible. Everything that's not, you know, a mirror, or the internal parts aren't too bad. The internal plastic is not too bad. And the door handles aren't bad either. They're I guess a thicker plastic, but they're thinner plastics, brittle. Another thing I like about this vehicle, and we'll go inside real quick, is the two sunroofs, which they're both controlled up here, but the back one is controlled in the back. The kids love it. The kids absolutely adore this. I also, though it cracks, and this is my first leather vehicle, man, leather seats, so easy to clean up. And I will be probably, I don't know if I'll rip out the carpet, because like I said, I'm not really going to try to go over and through water. But I definitely do like the leather seats and leather consoles and stuff like that. Another thing I like about the inside is, and I'll see if I can get you guys to see it, is it sounds so silly, but it just sounds so adventurous. It's got map holders. And so my phone with its case can't fit in there, because I have like a heftier case, but it would fit up there. The storage in general is phenomenal. We'll go to the back real quick and show you the cargo space in the back. You'll probably see some brake pads and GoPro equipment, but this is pretty common, so I'm not so much worried about that. But this, and it's on the other side too, are actually, they carry a lot. And I know a lot of people who have these, they uninstall them, and then you know, I've seen guys where they put like an air compressor right there, and they run the line to the tire, so it has a constant, you know, inflation deflation system. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the storage in this is great. It also has these hooks, and I haven't per se done like a pound test, because I know like the manufacturer will say, oh well, it's got, you know, it can carry this much weight. But I did take a ratchet strap that is made for 3,000 pounds, and I ratcheted and ratcheted and ratcheted and ratcheted, and could not get them to bend or break. So I don't, like I said, I don't know if that's a very scientific test, but I do know that will hold whatever I place back here. Another thing, even though this is an older vehicle, not a lot of older vehicles have them, but I don't know if you guys saw the car seat, but it has these anchors for car seats. And no, my child doesn't have the strap that goes to the back. When she did, it was nice. Another thing I like about this vehicle is, and I don't think you'll ever be able to fully understand what unless you're inside of it driving or riding, you won't understand, but your vision in here is phenomenal. I mean, you sit real close to this door, and this door is very thin, so probably not the safest if you get T-boned. But let me tell you, if you stick your head out, you're seeing everything, and you don't even have to stick your head out that much. I mean, you have so much vision that you will not need a spotter as much. Another cool thing is, I can't remember what they're called. I call them, and this might be the proper name for them, but the safari windows in the back roof. I don't know if you guys can see them back there, but that one and that one, I think that's pretty cool. It definitely lets you see up and behind you if you're backing, so you know if there's like a branch or something. And the rear window is huge too. The window is bigger than what your rear view mirror can see. So if you wanted to look out the whole back window, you have to move your head, and it doesn't like this is a small rear view mirror. It's pretty, I think it's larger than both my other vehicles. So, you know, that's nice. I think I've said it before, the comfort of driving this both on and off road is phenomenal. You get heated seats. There's just a lot of creature comforts that are great. Another thing is, guys, and this, you know, switchboards that a lot of people install for like lights and stuff like that. This vehicle already comes with it. Now, some of them aren't used because, you know, I don't have anything for them, and some of them have already been used for other things. But, you know, I'm gonna have two switches. Let's see if you guys can see right there and right there, that are both for my rear and forward-facing fog lights. But I'm gonna wire those things up for, you know, when I get a light bar or whatever, because I do want to try night driving, but or, you know, driving on trails, not night driving, driving dark all the time. But, you know, it will be cool to be able to just select a button instead of flipping some switch that I had to install, you know, a switchboard connected to the battery and then run all these wiring and stuff like that. These have already been in place, and all you gotta do is essentially splice the wire and connect it. Like I was saying, the not that this vehicle has features that other vehicles don't, and I don't want you to think that, oh, well, he's just naive. I mean, I am kind of naive, and I was not a Land Rover fan till I bought a Land Rover. And I couldn't tell you exactly what made me take the dive exactly, compared to getting a Jeep or a Toyota or something like that. I do know one of the facts, or one of the things I do like about this vehicle when I start overlanding, is there's not many of them on the road. So you kind of feel like, I feel accomplished being on the trail. And I have comments all the time, people saying like, man, you still got that thing on the road? This thing has like 200, sorry, it doesn't have 200, that's my other vehicle. This thing has like 170 to 180,000 miles with no major repairs. So, you know, knock on wood, but I feel like when someone sees something like this and they joke about, you know, oh, you're unreliable vehicle, you know, can't believe you have that thing on the trail. You know, it's kind of an accomplishment, you know, it's, you know, so going back, I'm not saying that, you know, only Land Rover has these features, but it is something that is on this vehicle, along with all these other features we're going to be talking about, that made me buy this, along with the fact that, you know, there's kind of also along lines of, you know, there's not much of a group of people who have it. But I'm going to tell you now that when you buy a Jeep, there's a lot of haters on Jeep. And when you buy it, and not only outside the Jeep community, but internally, I've heard stories about people going to Jeep jamborees and stuff like that, and they talk about like, oh, well, people are very divided on a bunch of different topics that, you know, I'm not going to go over. But if you weren't a part of their subculture within a subculture, that, like, forget you. Like, I don't like you. You're not, you know, you're not a real Jeep owner, or that's a fake Jeep or whatever. But I feel like the Land Rover community is super helpful. There's a whole bunch of forums, and there's a whole bunch of information out on it, and everybody just wants you to enjoy your Land Rover. And I have this quote-unquote crappy Land Rover, and I haven't, outside I've got outside hate for it, but within the Land Rover community, everybody just says, "Oh, dude, I'm so glad you got it. I hope you love it," and stuff like that. And so, from my personal experience, Land Rover community has been probably one of the best communities I've been a part of. I should say I'm not really a part of the community, but I'm a visitor in that community, and I've been enjoying it. I've had a Jeep experience. I've had 7.3 Power Stroke experience, and just those communities just have a little bit of toxicity, more than I'm willing to deal with. But moving on to talking about other things that we love about this Land Rover. Now, I would go under, but I don't know if I can get back up. Your pumpkins are both on the passenger side. And if you don't know why that's important, it's important because you're going over rocks or going over some type of terrain feature, and you don't have to have your low point on one side, so your front axle goes over, maybe turn right, and then once you get close to your rear vehicle, you have to cut it left to make sure that other pumpkin clears that obstacle. This one, if you clear it going over the front axle, you're clearing it over going the back axle. Also, the thing I like about this is the fact that the suspension parts, there's a lot of lift you can do before you have to start updating axillary parts. So that's one thing that is nice getting into it. You can put springs and shocks on this. I don't want to say you should always get in alignment whenever you do a lift, because it does, after a certain amount, does change the geometry. But there's a lot of other things that once you put a lift on, depending on if it's past 2 inches or 3 inches or whatever your vehicle can handle, there's going to be some type of you're gonna buy a lift kit, and then you're gonna have to turn around and buy these things that didn't come in the lift kit because your vehicle can't match that much lift. It wasn't designed to be lifted that high. So the things I don't like about this vehicle is the gas. There's a debate on whether you have to use premium or you can use regular, and my thought process is if it's true or not, I don't want to risk it, because the engine failing on this is such an expensive thing. So I do not want to tear up that engine at all. So the possibility of it happening, I'm just going to go ahead and go with whatever the safest option is. So I do put premium in mine, and I don't know what the previous owners put in. They could have put regular in it, but that might be the worst thing. Another thing about these Land Rovers is though they are comfortable compared to like Jeeps and stuff like that, there's a lot of vehicles that are a lot quieter than these. And the cabin noise and stuff like that is what I'm talking about. These, from my research, were designed for like the common man. They weren't on the higher end of like the Land Rover price range, and though Land Rovers are expensive, both pre-owned and new, I don't like how loud it is, considering it is a luxury vehicle. And other Range Rovers, I know some generations are better than others, and Land Rover Discoveries are better than others, but like specifically this generation, it's kind of loud. Another thing I don't like is the tire mount on the back. As soon as you get a heavier tire and the whole wheel setup, both rim, the whole thing, you have to upgrade the tire mount, because it will just rip right off as soon as you hit a bump. It's just, they're not strong. Not that they're corrosive, or they get a lot of like rust usage and stuff like that. Just never were built for a bigger tire. Another thing I don't like about this vehicle is that's glass, and very, very expensive to replace. And for something that's supposed to be off-road, you know, having these on here, you got to figure out how to protect them, because I'm telling you now, I bought one off of a guy on Facebook that has like 6 Land Rover Discovery 2s, so he sold it to me for about $100. But I'm telling you, all these light fixtures all around, they're glass, and it's so expensive. You can drill them and stuff like that, but like, you need special bits for it. You know, it's a huge mess. Another thing I don't like about these Land Rovers, and I'm going to come up with a creative solution. I forgot to tell you about it when I was inside. Another thing I don't like about these things, and you probably saw it before and I never pointed it out, is these headliners are awful. I don't know what moron decided to do these headliners, but they sag everywhere, and a lot of vehicles have saggy headliner. But these, I mean, headliners are expensive as it is, and if you're going to go to a shop to get like a custom made headliner put in, it's so expensive because of all the 2 sunroofs, all the different netting and like this stuff. You know, it's expensive, and they went cheap on it. So here we are trying to make sure sorry, I got the hiccups. Make sure an already expensive vehicle doesn't have silly things like this. But yeah, those are some of the things I don't like. Guys, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, or if I missed anything, you know, like this video is supposed to be pulled out a little too far away. Let's bring that in a little bit. This video is very informational, and if I said anything that's not correct, if I said anything or missed out on anything, like, say it in the comments. Don't be a jerk about it. Don't be a prick. You know, let's try to get people into the overlanding community and not feel like it's a pissing contest, because it's really not. I mean, I want everybody to enjoy, you know, whether it's, you know, just doing weekend warrior things, or, you know, maybe they're just taking their Subaru on a trail and just want to partake in, you know, I like to call it diet overlanding. You know, and so I want you guys to watch these videos. I want you guys to correct me. I want you guys to, you know, put in information I left out. If you guys have any questions, you can reach out to me in the comments. I'll try to answer them. I know that when I did this video, I mean, I'm looking at 2 subscribers, and my intro video only got 25 views, so I probably won't get a lot of traffic for this. But I just want you guys to just not be jerks about it, whatever you do. And if someone posts something, a comment or whatever, and then they turn around and someone, you know, you say something, and don't fight, guys. Let's try to get everybody into the overlanding community. Let's get everybody informed on what they need. Let's not try to do any gimmicks or, you know, flexes. I mean, you know, I'm going to acknowledge when I see, you know, if I'm out on the trail and you have a really nice rig, and I might think to myself, you know, oh my God, like, he spent so much money on useless crap. And you know, I want you guys to know that I love all builds, no matter how ridiculous a 1937 fire truck, or if it's a 2002 Land Rover, if it's a full size, you know, Dodge, you know, TRX. I mean, the objective is to have fun, guys. Let's not ruin anybody's fun. This is Marshall, signing out.